All right, it's Tuesday night, January 27th. Help me out.
2015?
2015. Yeah, I was looking at the calendar today before the show started. I was looking at that, January 27th. And I was like, January 27th. That date means something to me for some reason. I know it means something to me. And then just like, boom, it hit me. It's the anniversary of my first date with my ex-wife. It's the 31st anniversary tonight of so happy anniversary out there, Linda. It was always one reason. I kind of remember it. I don't know if everybody remembers our first date, but our wedding anniversary is a year and a half off July 27th. So it was like every 6 months we had an anniversary. It's like 6 months to the day we had the anniversary, the wedding anniversary, the anniversary of the date, the anniversary of the date every 6 months. So like getting twice as many. Although there were just in different years. This would have been the 30th anniversary. This is the 30th anniversary of us getting married. But we're not there. She's actually like, no, but whatever. But there's something about it. That was my day today. I think you have an idea what my day's like. What's your day like?
Oh man, you just throw it at me like that. What was the day like? It was busy. We got a lot of things going on. A lot of exciting things going on with Serenely Speaking, as well as the JGF organization, of which I'm the spokesman for now. So busy in that sense. We did a couple shoots today with your help, to where we are doing a commercial for Thursday night's show with Arisen Strength, which I'm really excited to get into, because it's a subject that's pretty. It definitely impassions me. It's something that I'm definitely involved in because of the subject being bullying. And I've had some instances that could constitute as bullying, but more, I just don't like it, and so I definitely have a lot of thoughts about it. So we've been doing a lot of work, busy, but that's the good thing, and and then we have your show here, so we've been busy here too.
Yeah, the bullying thing, working on that and kind of going through the script and thinking about it and listening to you talk about it, it does remind me of sort of my upbringing and kind of what bullying means to me. I mean, it might be something a little bit different to everybody else. And I don't really have a lot of experience with bullying, only because, it's just lucky for me and maybe lucky for the other person too, because I react very poorly, especially I did back then, to bullying. It's one of the components there is this, that sense of being ignored and your voice not being heard. That there's a powerlessness to it, and it isn't. And maybe it's powerlessness and being ignored more than my voice not being heard. I guess I'm less worried about my voice being heard unless I intend for it to be heard and I'm ignored, and then ignoring that hurts. If I could do this show every night and nobody can ever watch it, and I'm fine with that. My voice is not being heard, but at least I feel like I'm expressing myself, and I'm not being punished for expressing myself. I'm not afraid to express myself. So so maybe that's kind of where it is. It's more than just having your voice heard. It's being able to express yourself safely. And for some reason, whatever the reason was, completely my distortion perhaps, but it was my reality at the time, was I felt like I could not express myself for the longest time, certainly not safely. And I remember once in about, I guess it had to be 8th grade, so this is going back a while, some kid hit me in the head with a wrench. Whatever. We were outside, and he was just a class jerk. As I recall, he was shorter than me, and I'm not the tallest person, so he might have been like a short kid, but that could just be projecting, years later too, or something. At some point in time, I thought he was short, so he strikes. My memory is, he's short. But he hit me in the head with a wrench, and like, well, what the, but I didn't do anything about it at the time. I'm also, especially at that time, maybe I'd do things a little differently now if I had a chance, but it's hard to say if I would. But most people I relish getting back at somebody. So if you choose to pick a fight with me, I get to choose when the fight ends. maybe it's that how do you split a cake between two kids? Is you let one kid cut it, and the other one gets to pick which half they. It's sort of like this. Yeah, you get to pick when the fight starts. I get to pick when it ends. So you hit me in the head with a wrench. You started a fight. I get to end it. I get to end it on my terms. And it did not happen right away. In fact, it did not happen until a year later. And just a flash of anger, a flash of memory, a flash of this is it. The guy was in a vulnerable position. We were in a classroom, actually, and I was behind him in the classroom, and he was sitting in his desk, and one of those little high school desks where you're kind of wedged in there a little bit. And so I was behind him, and I just dribbled his face on the desk like a basketball for a little while until they pulled me off and sent us to not the hospital, to the principal's office. And he was suspended for a couple of days for fighting. He was a troublemaker. So he got that. I had to eat lunch in the principal's office for a week. May have gotten paddled. They were real big on paddling down there in Florida, but I wasn't suspended or anything like that. I'm sure my parents must have been notified. I can't remember if they were or not, but I just had to eat lunch in the principal's office for a week. It was really what I remember doing, which I thought was, in a way it was funny because he got suspended, and he definitely got the worst end of that. But it was coming back from a year earlier where he hit me in the head with a wrench, and again I chose the manner in which this would end. And as far as I remember, it ended. I don't remember ever having problems with him. He may have been. For all I know, he could have been expelled and left the country. I have no recollection of this. I don't even know the kid's name at this point. It was somebody I knew at the time, I guess. Because I knew that when he hit me in the head with a wrench, that this was not somebody that I wanted to hit me in the head with a wrench. It was somebody I knew about. So I don't remember exactly how I knew him or how well I knew him at the time. And after that, I don't remember. I have no idea what happened to him. I don't know anything about him at this point. So that happens. But there was some bullying, and it was definitely kind of threw me off. But then I had another incident. It was in college. And there was some alcohol involved. Might as well be upfront about that. We were in college and we were drinking, but we were done drinking for the night. A friend of mine, and they were more friends of his. I don't call them friends. They were people that he knew. I was over at his room, his dorm area, and we were it was Friday weekend. And it was after finals. And we just kind of hang around campus for a couple of days, drinking, and before we went home for finals, or maybe had one final later. But it was at the end of finals week, either just after or at the tail end. And we were doing some pretty heavy partying. And then I was staying over at his dorm, sleeping on the floor, or his roommate's bed, or something, whatever was going on. And these guys who lived on his floor at his dorm decided to break in and threw buckets of water on us. And these guys, I don't know them, and as I knew of them again, and I knew of them to be like people who picked on him a lot. Yeah, he thought of him. It was just this guy Cliff that I knew. It was his name, Cliff. Maybe I called him Cliff because it might be Cliff Cleveland, or maybe his name really was Cliff. I don't know. But it was the kind of thing where he was like almost like Fredo from The Godfather, like, oh yeah, these are my friends, really, these are my friends. Meanwhile, they're shitting on him, and you kind of you feel you don't know whether to feel sorry for him or and he was but I did not like his friends at all, or these people who he called his friends. I never liked them. I didn't like them because of the way they treated him. And there was nothing about them that was likable to me. It was just, I don't know. He was just trying to fit in with them. He lived in their floor. Whatever. They threw buckets of water on us. And of course, we've been drinking, so it's 2 or 3 in the morning. And I lost it. And I ended up going to the kitchen and getting a knife, and one of the guys got a cut on his face. A bunch of guys, about 5 or 6 guys, ended up kicking the crap out of me. I ended up in the hospital. Had to have surgery on both my eyes. I still have suffered damage, mostly blind to my right eye from detached retina. I mean, it was without the glasses, it's really terrible. With the glasses, it's still not the greatest vision in the world. But yeah, it was. The things like, what would I do differently now? I don't know, because I don't know why people do stuff that's like that to people. I've never liked pranks on people you don't like. The whole idea of pulling a prank on somebody who you don't like, to me, is not a prank. A prank is supposed to be a fun thing. It's something that everybody can laugh about, including the target after it's done. It's something that they can appreciate and laugh at and think, oh yeah, I was the butt of the joke. And it's the kind of thing you kind of rotate around among friends. You don't make one person the butt of every joke. To me, that's not fun. That's, what is that? If we can pass it around a little bit, make me the joke one time, make you the joke, make me the joke, and the prank should be something that everybody can laugh about, including especially the target of the prank after it's all done. If the person who the prank is pulled on doesn't appreciate it afterwards, then it was not a funny prank, and it was a mistake, and somebody should be apologizing, and especially if it's on strangers, pranks on strangers like that. I don't know these people from Adam. I don't like them. They're throwing buckets of water at me. The middle of the they're breaking into the apartment, into the room, throwing buckets of water on us at 3 a.m. I don't know how I'm supposed to react to that. Am I supposed to think that's funny? I don't think pulling a knife on him and cutting a guy is the right answer. But I was also not medicated at the time, like I am now. But it really does. When I think about it, it really gets me fired about bullying and why things like bullying are so important to talk about. And I'm really looking forward to a Thursday night show with Arisen Strength, Shane with his motivational speaking and just supportive show. This week of Arisen Strength, we'll be talking about the bullying, and I'm looking forward to that. And I think everybody needs to take the time to think about bullying and how it impacts their lives, and what is it about it that is really kind of the core issue, and how can you address it? Because sometimes you hear about this, oh well, that's just something kids do. Yeah. I don't know. Is that is something kids do once in a while maybe, but is it normal to for one kid to bully another kid for 12 years? I think it's normal for kids to sort of flex their muscles and to try and step outside their comfort zone maybe, or maybe exert a little control. But it's also, when somebody does that inappropriately, like a bully, they need to get smacked down and realize that's not the way you do that. So there's this delicate balance here that, yes, bullying is natural, but it doesn't mean we have to let it go on and on and on and on and never react to it and just accept it blindly. That just to me seems horribly unfair. And I probably sound like I'm just a crazy person, and he's gonna pull a knife on me if I do anything. But yeah, you never know. Maybe I do. Maybe I will.
I don't think you're crazy at all. But unfortunately, or fortunately, whatever way that you want to look at it, normally the person that's being bullied, either number one, doesn't get the opportunity in order to get their payback, or they choose not to. And a lot of the reasons why they choose not to is because it's a secret within inside them. And what happens is that there's a self-loathing. There's more to it that's going on. This is just reinforcing that being a problem within their lives, and there's some terrible stories that are out there of what the consequences are of bullying, and what bullying is today, as opposed to what it was, say, back when I was a kid and when you were a kid. Totally different. It's there used to be, for those who are my age, and I'm 43, and even though I'm going to be turning 44 soon, I'll still say I'm 43 now. The movie The Bodyguard. That was that's not a situation of what bullying is anymore. It's not a one-on-one thing anymore. Normally, it's a large group that, when I say large, I'm talking about anywhere between 4, 5, 6, whatever, that are against one person. And and that really ends up being overwhelming, and to the point as to where the person who's being bullied doesn't see a way out. And then they start thinking different. They start thinking in ways that are extremely detrimental to them, and they think that they're doing the world a favor by taking themselves out of the situation, and that's just not what I want to see anymore. This is a hot topic. It's something that's going on quite a bit, and I think that it's something that needs to stop, just like you do. I don't understand where people get the gall or the intestinal fortitude to think that they're that much better than anyone else, to where they have to bring somebody else down to make them look bigger. And that's another thing. That's really a myth. They don't think that they're bigger. They're more insecure, is what it is. And sometimes they flex their muscles, like you say, in order to look like they're more secure than what they are, especially in a group, because they don't want to be outside of that group. And, to stop bullying, it's going to take a lot of courage from a lot of different areas. It's not just going to be the person that's being bullied. It's the bullier, for one thing. And another thing is it's going to be the supporters, the family, the brothers, sisters, friends, whatever the case may be. They need to have the courage too. And they need to understand that, this is not something to play around with anymore, because there is a precedent that's out there that, people are taking the only choice that they think that they have, which is the worst. And that's something that I can't fathom wanting to continue. So that's why Arisen Strength, we took on a subject real, right off the bat. It's our first episode that we're going to be doing the show, and we took it on ahead, right, full speed ahead, and because of situations like you had, and that's something that we need to do our best in order to stop.
Yeah, just one other. It's not me, but it is. People remember this because it didn't get as much coverage as I thought it would, or people weren't as shocked about it enough. When Mitt Romney was running for president, which he's talking about running for president now, and he went to a very exclusive boys' school, very, 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 very expensive private boarding school, and in his senior year, he was kind of like the thug leader, almost like almost like a cliche, the kid who kind of runs the school. His dad was the governor of Michigan, and his father was also a car executive. I don't know when his father became. His father was like president or CEO of American Motors, or very wealthy. Ended up becoming governor of Michigan, and he's at this boarding school. So he's the cock of the walk. He's the big man on campus, and he was the lead bully. And there was a story. This completely horrifies me. It involves an underclassman where he had a group of 5 or 6, and he's the ringleader. And they decide they're going to get this guy. They don't like him. This is a prank again, I guess. But they don't like him, so it's not a prank. They chase him down. The kid is running for his life. He's scared to death. Romney has some scissors, and they hold the guy down. They cut his hair off. The kid is screaming for his, screaming bloody murder, because he doesn't know, and then, they did talk to some of the friends who were involved in that during the campaign, and they're all pretty much across the board pretty horrified that they were involved in that incident, and it profoundly affected a lot of them, except for Mitt, For him, it was like, well, it's just a prank, just kids being kids. No, you were a senior in high school. You were 18 years old. This other kid was, he was 16 or 17. This is not kids being kids. These are men. If this had been a black man, a group of black boys chasing somebody down with scissors, and they'd all be in jail, not running for president.
Long periods of time.
And actually, maybe it should be a chance to, for me to full disclosure through my story is this incident with the knife. This happened on campus at university. I won't say what school it was. Wearing the shirt.
Not saying a word.
But no police were called. I did have to go before a board at school, and what happened is I was asked to move off campus. I was living in the dorms at the time. This was the end of the semester. And they basically said, you can't move back into the dorms after Christmas break. I think it was before Christmas break. And so we went home for Christmas break. When I came back, I had to move into an apartment. But that was the extent of my punishment, which could have been much worse for somebody else. Been much worse. I got very, very lucky that, with a knife attack, that I never got a police record out of it. There's probably a sealed school record that says, oh yeah, attack somebody with a knife kind of thing. But how serious could it have been really if all they did was ask me to move off campus? I don't know, but the guy did get a mark on his face. I mean, he was bleeding, and he has a scar to this day. Probably not a real deep scar. I don't even know this person's name. I never kept up with him afterwards. I don't know what happened to him. But I don't know if he went to the hospital or not that night. It's all a blur to me. But yeah, that happened. So bullying, just one of these things. Just but that mitt one really got to me during the campaign a few years ago because again, it was the bullying topic. All right, enough of the bullying. On to want to zip through a couple of stories of kind of what I was talking about. We're calling this episode. I was calling this episode tonight correlation, causation, and coincidence. This is something that our brain does. The brain is it's the lazy brain, but it's a pattern recognition machine, and it likes to tell a story. It takes triggering events, and it likes to build a narrative around it. It helps us to remember and to tell a story to ourselves, and a lot of memories built this way. There's this one here. This is a story of a guy who's an economic analyst, so he's probably got a pretty solid math background. He writes a blog, and in his blog, he told the story of how he beat his prostate cancer. And this is his personal experience, so it's all his perception, of course, but it's his experiences, which are also all anecdotal, things that he did. Something happened, and is it a scientific study? No, but we should listen to him tell his story and see what happened. And as with a lot of tests, a lot of cases of cancer and other things, people find out about it because of a screening they do. He did a prostate screening, and it came back a number that eventually concerned him, and he decided that he had prostate cancer, and then he was going to. And when you get sort of diagnosed with, in his case, it was stage 1, which is the earliest stages. You have about 3 choices. You can either do a radiation / chemotherapy, or some sort of process like that, or you could do surgery, or you could just do nothing. And typically and in his case especially, when you read the details, it was to do nothing is kind of like the best thing to do in those cases, just to wait and see. Prostate is not one of these things that if you catch it early, you can let it go for a little bit. Because when I say catch it early, when you start detecting signs of it, you can kind of let it go a little bit and wait for it to happen. Wait for something to happen rather than sort of jump in right away with surgeries and radiations. And because of that, because prostate works that way, it's the prostate exam, prostate test that they do for the cancer is not something they just recommend blanket all men all the time should always do this. They put you into a risk pool, and when you are in a risky enough pool, whether it's men over 40 or men over 50 or a history of it, when you're in a high risk situation, when the risk is high enough, then they do recommend that you get the prostate exam. The reason they do this is because even though there's not a whole lot of false positives, you get some sort of false positive readings sometimes. And it only takes a small false positive reading. But if you start giving this test to everybody, then a lot of false positives are going to come up. And then a lot of people are going to be seeking surgeries and radiations who shouldn't be seeking it. Or they're just going to be telling them, don't worry, wait and see, wait and see, wait and see. And nobody wants to hear that from a doctor. If a doctor tells you got cancer, the last thing you want to hear is wait and see. This guy, one of his doctors did suggest wait and see. Another one suggested surgery, which he was against. But he decided he was going to treat himself. So he went and did some research on the internet, and he found 10 different, 10 was the number he had in mind early, but he found 10 different things that he could do with his diet, exercise, or supplements to combat his prostate cancer. And he did all 10 of them. And a year later, or after a while, the cancer was gone. So basically, so it's a story of how he beat his cancer. But there's this. When you kind of carefully look at it, the mistakes that he made when he was doing his research. He found a paper on some I don't know, something that you could take to help fight off the cancer. But it turns out there was one study that suggested that, and it was and it became very popular because people, there's a study here that says you can do this. So then everybody started linking to that study. So when you type in sort of prostate alternative treatments, it's the thing that comes up first because there's so many things that link to it. But they all link back to this same original study, which, like the autism study that we talked about before, the doctor ended up getting disbarred, and the same thing here. This guy falsified this study, falsified the results. The study's been withdrawn. The guy lost his job, ruined his career. But because so many people have linked to it, it comes up first thing when you search on this stuff. But nobody does the deep dive to say what is this? What is the real status of this study? Autism and vaccinations. You can look it up. People, thousands, millions of links to it, but it all comes back to this Whitaker study that was done. It was all falsified, fraud, hoax. The guy lost his license and was disbarred over it. There is no reason, and in fact, there are studies not as well cited as the hoax study that this treatment this guy was doing actually increases your chances of getting prostate cancer. So. But anyway, it was somebody's personal experience, and they're not an expert in the field. But what they did is they said, "Hey, I took this test, and it measures a level." And that's another mistake that people make. We talk about this with the ladies with the fat butts. They did like a level. And they watch your levels. There's just a number, and the number should be under a 2. I don't know. Maybe it's under a 4. It's considered good. Okay. And he does the test, and he has like almost a 7, and then he has it again right away a month later, and it's went from like a 6.5 to like a 7.1. Which now he figures is too high, so he has a biopsy done. And then after he has his biopsy done, he has to test a third time soon after the biopsy, and now it's at like 17. And this is when he's sure that he has the cancer now, because this number is supposed to be low, and this number should not be, and then all of a sudden that jumped up to a 17. And then he went off on his merry way, and then a year or so later, he finds out that he's now cancer-free. So he beat cancer by, getting on the internet and researching, and then following everything it said. But when you deconstruct it, it's a pattern. He saw some things that he did. I did these tests. I convinced myself I had cancer. I did all these things, and then the cancer was gone. When what probably happened is he never had cancer to begin with. Because one, it's not a low score that matters, just like with the big butts thing, it was like ladies with big butts have smart babies. It's not that having the big butt itself gives you the smart babies. There's this thing about, you have your happy medium, and there's some people whose numbers are just naturally high. People whose numbers are naturally low. What you're looking for is changes in those numbers. So his number going from a 6.5 to a 7.1 is not anything to get excited about. So he shouldn't have, there's a lot of things. One, he shouldn't have the tests too quickly, one after the other, because the numbers do fluctuate a little bit on their own. So you want to test them far enough apart where you're kind of getting past the fluctuations. So if you're doing it every month, you're going to see lots of fluctuations. But if you do it every 6 months, which is why I said the wait and see thing, we'll do a test, and then 6 months later we'll do a test. And then the idea is that any little fluctuations would have kind of worked themselves out, and you'll get a number. And then maybe another one after another 6 months. So you get like 3 tests over a year. And then you could start drawing conclusions. When we do it every month, you say 6.5, which you thought was too high. But again, it means nothing because it's just one number. In astronomy, they refer to it as once is an accident, twice is a coincidence, 3 times is a pattern. So 1 is just an accident. I mean, it's just a number. Now you take the second test, and it's like a 7.0. That's just a coincidence. There's like okay. Now the third one you get a pattern, but you actually have to do this outside the noise of the variability. Well, he didn't do that. He took 2 really quick, and he thought the number went up too high for himself, so he had the biopsy done. Well, it turns out when you do a prostate biopsy, it really ramps your numbers up for some reason. Whatever they're doing to you when they do the biopsy, probably because you're cutting something and it's releasing stuff into your system.
The body don't like that.
And the numbers go way up. So his number went to a 17. Well, that was that number goes to a 17 because you just did a biopsy. Whether or not that. So you have to kind of slow the stuff down and follow sort of the procedure, because you don't want to be seeing patterns that are not there. This guy is convinced even to this day that he cured his cancer, when the truth probably is he never had cancer to begin with. But how do you convince somebody that? You can't. We've talked about that too. People have a belief in their head. They're not going to be convinced because the pattern is so Exactly. I mean, man, it's like I did this, everything right. I did this, I did this, I did this. You know, the numbers got high. I got the biopsy. The doctor said this, and whatever. And then I did followed all the procedures for these alternative cures, and it went away. I must be right. It's like, you know, it's hard to believe that, you know, maybe you never had it. Maybe it was you were looking at was correlation and coincidence, and then there's a graph, another autism graph here. If you saw this graph, would you think that organic food causes autism? I mean, there's the graphs. They're exactly the same. I mean, this is from 1998, over 10 years. I don't know how much more accurate of a graph you need to see between autism and organic food sales. And we talked about the ice cream and the drowning. And there's a correlation between those two, not a causation, but both of those are correlated to warm weather. So when weather gets warmer, more people eat ice cream, more people drown. So you see a correlation. This is actually a little bit more insidious because this is just a coincidence. There is no connection between autism and organic food sales. This is not a correlation. They're not both correlated to some third thing like warm weather that's driving this. This is just a fact of things like autism and organic food sales are going to be strongly correlated to the population. The population is getting bigger. So however many there are, you know, it just grows. They both grow at the same rate. They're growing with the population. So, you know, there's not a real big surprise that this would ever happen. Yeah, Shay.
Well, it's like, you know, getting back to the article in regards to the gentleman who believed he had cancer and he's cured it. I was actually diagnosed with cancer at one point in time, and I happened to be going to a study. My liver count was high, and it was off the charts. And so they did further studies and everything, and you know, here it is. They're telling me that I very likely have liver cancer, and which really confused the hell out of me because I don't drink. That was my answer. I don't drink, so that can't be possible. Not realizing as to how much the liver is really involved into the body. Well, to make a long story short, after I had worked for the American Cancer Society for a while, so I was very well in tune with treatments and medications and everything like that. They convinced me that I needed treatment, and I did chemotherapy, of which you know, is not fun, and it turned out to be that you know, after a while, the only thing the doctor said, you know what, you're looking pretty good right now. You know, he says, what have you been doing different? You know, whatever you're doing different, keep doing it. The only thing different that I did was I started working out, and you know, it wasn't. And the only reason why I did that is so that I would feel better on the better days, you know, on the good days. That's it, you know. But to the doctor, me deciding to work out cured me, you know, because I looked better. When in tune, what it really was is that it happened to be because of my lifestyle and because of my stress that I had within my lifestyle that threw off the numbers. And, you know, it's like I went through the process of chemotherapy and you know, being sick and, you know, for long periods of time. And, you know, all I did was I worked out. But that wasn't all I did. You know, I mean, obviously, I stopped that lifestyle that I was doing. And, you know, and next thing you know, I'm feeling better. And you know, and they had me going in. I had cancer, I had porphyria, whatever, you know, and it was, the bottom line was this stress, which can throw off the body count for sure, the body levels, you know, and all I did was I worked out. So working out also cures cancer. So.
No, but that's it with these tests. Usually one test tells you very little. I guess they have to tell doctor to doctor, and you really like need 3 tests to kind of see what's happening. Is one test is just a score. Your baseline just could be higher than somebody else's. So whatever they're testing for, There's no way of knowing without other tests to compare it to. And the tests usually can't happen right away, so you have to wait a while. And then you take a second test, and then you take a test, and there's some scariness to it that it's like, oh, do I have to wait a year because I could? Well, a lot of these things do progress slowly if you catch them early. It's when you catch them too late. So that's why you want to see doctors on a regular basis. You don't necessarily want to get every test on as early as possible. That's why you need to talk to the doctors about when's a good time to take these tests, because depending on what the risk is with the false positives, I mean, there could be tests that could be 99% accurate, but if the portion of the population that really has the disease is very, very small, then even at 99% accurate, you're going to get 1% false positives, and 1% might be many, many times more than the people who actually have the disease. So you're creating lots of false positives of things you don't need to be creating. So you put people in the risk pools and say, oh, now you're in a risk pool. Your mother had it, your father had it, you're over this age. That number needs to get up high enough so that it justifies the the accuracy of the test is not going to be overwhelmed by the sort of the risk that you have. So we have to do that kind of thing and do this stuff carefully, and that's why I said there's usually 3 treatments, which were it was like surgery, then there's like radiation, chemotherapy, but then the other one treatment really is do nothing. That is actually a treatment for cancer, especially in stage 1. Do nothing is not a bad treatment because it may not be cancer after all. Like you said, there could be things going on with stress, throwing all kinds of levels off. It could have been that your levels weren't off. That was just what your level is when you take that test. And
the body's amazing as to what it is that it can, react to and actually fix.
But but when you get like 3 of these tests and you can draw a graph that connects the dots, now you can start seeing, is it, because that's what you're looking for. Is it going up? Is it going down? Is it steady? If one goes up, one goes down. You haven't really learned anything. You're looking for patterns in the body in those tests, and looking for real patterns. And to find real patterns, first of all, you need lots of points. And even if you have lots of points, as this graph shows, that pattern may not be meaningful. And so talking with the doctors, this is good. One thing that I've mentioned in here is this great Feynman quote about scientists saying that I think a scientist can be just as dumb as the next guy when they're talking about non-scientific subjects. And then I've even upped it a little bit and saying that hey, even scientists can be as dumb as the next guy if they're talking in areas that they're not experts in. Okay, here's this from this blog called Frontiers for Young Minds, and it's called Aiming Too High or Too Low When Communicating Science. So it's like, what should we do with discussing science with our kids or with other people? How should we teach it? How should we communicate it? And a big part of communication is not so much how well you said something, but it's how well it's understood. That's the ultimate test of communication. You could say, I'm the world's greatest communicator, just nobody understands what I'm saying. Well, then guess what? You're not a great communicator. Great communicators are understood when they speak. It doesn't matter how great a job they think they're doing. The proof is in the pudding, as they say. It's how well are you actually communicating. Communication is that it has to be received. You can be the greatest broadcaster in the world. That'd be one thing, but to actually be a communicator, you have to actually be reaching other people. So how do we reach kids with science? And this was a fun little blog entry. I encourage you to come to the website, to the Facebook page, Random Thoughts with Random Access. That's where you find these things, and you can see the links and you can read them yourself. I don't want to just report necessarily, read them to you. That's something you should do on your own. But I like to talk about them a little bit. And so this one, there's a group of friends, and they're all professionals in sort of technical fields, scientific fields, sitting around talking. There's a geologist, a molecular biologist, a civil engineer. There's a group of people, and one of them brings up the question, says, what is something you would expect, and I guess they think they take a college level student, but somebody who's been through a course, a first-year course in your subject area. What's something that you would expect them to be able to explain in less than 50 words? And don't give us the explanation, but what we're going to play a game. We're all professionals. We're all got science backgrounds. We've all been through science classes. You tell us what you think is like kind of a basic fundamental idea in your subject area, and then we'll see if we can come up with a description, or see if we can come up with it. And then of course you tell us what the answer is, and we'll see how well we do. So this is that Feynman test of how well, the up version essentially is, are they as dumb as the next guy, and then the next guy in that case being not a science person, or can they do a pretty good job of understanding basic science in other fields in which they're not experts in, and not highly technical ideas, but like I said, basic ideas. What would you expect a college freshman to have learned in your class, in your subject area? So it's a really interesting thing. And they go through, and it goes through each of them, picking something. So like the geologist, he asks which would be a higher potential for the most damage for an earthquake, and then there's one with convergent plates, one with divergent plates, or one with subductive plates, maybe, or something like that. And then another one. The physicist asks, I've got two cubes, one made of metal and one made of wood. Rough hewn wood, so it's not polished or anything, but highly polished steel and a sort of rough wood. But they're both exactly the same mass cubes. So maybe the metal cube's a little bit smaller, and the wood cube's a little bit bigger because of the density. But they have the same mass. And I put both cubes on an inclined, slanted plane, wooden plane also. And then I start angling it until one of them starts sliding. Which one slides first? And then so there's different questions like that. Why does the mitochondria only appear? Why do you only inherit your mitochondria from your mother? That's the mitochondria in your every cell in your body is a mitochondria, so the mitochondrial DNA. So it's just a little bit of DNA, but it only comes from your mother. You don't inherit any from your father. So why is that? So the questions like this, in which in the areas for a microbiologist, basic question. For a physicist, basic question. For a geologist, a basic question. And supposedly, if you've had some science, or if you haven't had some science in that particular area, but if you just had some basic science, how would you approach and answer these questions? And it's a mixed bag. But the one thing that was interesting, and this is the part that I found really interesting, and they do talk about it here at the end of this blog, is although the people didn't know the answers necessarily, they knew which questions had to be answered in order to get the answer. That's that being scientific minded. That's being tuned into the universe a little bit. And I talk about it, being tuned into the universe a lot of times is asking the right questions. You're in an unfamiliar situation. How do you navigate unfamiliar situations? Well, one way to do it is to ask the right questions. You don't have to have all the answers, but if you can ask the right questions, you can get to the answer quickly. And that's one of the skills. That's one of unbelievably valuable skill that we should all have, but it is a skill that is learned in science. Because I've talked about this before, about math is this thing, that's this model of the universe that's always talking, and science is this model of always listening. It's listening for the truth. Well, it's listening after it asks a question. That's what the experiment is, kind of asking the question, and then you get the result. You listen for the answer. So being able to create scientific experiments to get answers is just like forming a question. So these people are actually, they prove that they're very highly skilled at knowing which questions to ask. Like with the earthquake question, the key is which of these three configurations of plates, tectonic plates, stores the most energy so that it can be released, and then it would cause so they knew that it's closely determined, so that you know how to approach the question. These are the kind of questions I want to ask. As you might have guessed, a lot of people would have guessed, maybe it's the cubes. That has to do with the coefficient of friction. How slippery the two surfaces are together. But you can ask questions about what's the coefficient of, and in this case, static friction is the one that you're interested in. This coefficient of static friction is what kind of holds you, and you want to break that, and so you can start sliding. And they go through the different things. The mitochondrial, why is it only in the mother's DNA? Well, something must happen that, because most of us humans come from a sperm from their father and the egg from your mother, and that something must happen either during the fertilization process or even in the formation of the sperm, that there's no mitochondria. And the mitochondria is just in the egg, so when the egg is fertilized, there's the mitochondria. And it turns out that And after they say the answer, oh, of course that had to be true. The mitochondria is the part of your cell actually that's responsible for doing all the little energy. It's when you're eating and feeding yourself and you're creating all this energy in your body. It's the mitochondria is that doing all that. It basically consumes everything that we do. It's the source of all our energy. And in the sperm, the mitochondria is all concentrated in the tail of the sperm, because that's the part that needs to do the swimming. And there's no mitochondria in the head of the sperm. And then when it fertilizes the egg, actually the tail drops off the sperm, doesn't go into the mitochondria. It goes into the fertilized egg, just the head goes in. So it goes in without the mitochondria and gets left outside the egg. So it's like, it's a pretty elegant solution, but it came down to knowing that it had to do with the fertilization process, and they knew what kind of questions to ask. It has to do something with the sperm, essentially, where the mitochondria doesn't get in with it, or it just never had it. And then the never had it is kind of a bad question, because cells have to have mitochondria or they're going to die. And so this sperm has to have mitochondria, but it doesn't need it once it fertilizes, as it's getting into the egg. So I was like, but they go through all these questions, all these cases, and when you listen to it, it's what the experts are doing. The trained experts is they're asking the right questions. They may not know the answers. They don't know everything, but they tend to ask the right questions, at least in scientific fields. These are all scientists, and they're asking questions about scientific fields. Does that translate when they move to other fields? That now, are they going to ask the right questions? I'm going to defer to Richard Feynman and say no. They're just going to be dumb as the next guy when it's outside of science. When it's a non-scientific area, because they're not trained in asking questions outside of science. They're trained in asking scientific questions, so they're trained in building scientific experiments. So when they get away from those and they're not thinking in terms of science, they're not using their science-minded thinking. They're not thinking in terms of experiments. They're not relying on their expertise. They're probably going to ask the same sort of silly questions that a lot of us ask. Sometimes we just ask silly questions. You got to start somewhere, but we should put some effort into trying to ask better questions, because when we ask better questions, we get meaningful answers. And when we get meaningful answers, we don't get unnecessary cancer surgeries. We don't put ourselves in unnecessary dangerous situations that could be avoided if we had just thought to ask different questions. And that's what I've mentioned before. Don't pray for answers, pray for questions. Because with the right questions, you can get meaningful answers. But an answer without a question is meaningless. They need to be paired together, so the question has to come first. We're going to finish up here with the Twitter update. Let's see what we're up to today. I don't remember what it was yesterday. Big number, 956. I thought it was a higher number than that yesterday, but maybe it was 956 also yesterday.
Well, it was 957 just about, I don't know, a half hour ago. So
just lost somebody.
We were at 956, and it went up. So I was encouraged. Now I'm not.
Okay, we did get to 960 for a while there earlier this week, and I started at 960 back on day one. Today is day 31. This is day 31. Oh, and this is the 31st anniversary of my first date with my ex-wife, and it's the 31st show that we've done.
That's a coincidence.
Or is it a pattern? I don't know. Maybe there's a correlation or a causation there.
No, we're ending the show.
Give us a call. The feedback line. It's 15189-666-175. That's good in the U.S. and Canada. Every day from 3 to 4, 3 to 5 on the weekends, and every night 11 to midnight after the show. 15189-666-175. See us on Facebook. See us on Twitter. See us on Google. See us on YouTube. Boy, we're everywhere. We're ubiquitous. Courage.
Have a good night, folks.